ABC Africa is not really a documentary. It's about talking, in Italian or in French, we say raconte. You talk about your trip. I mean, this is what happened day by day. It's not a documentary. It's a feature. It's not his style, basically. There is no story. There is no, it just happens. We go and we open the door and we see the guy who's singing and he becomes a protagonist or part of the movie.
We thought that it would be interesting to have a very well-renowned cineast to shed some light on a very important problem in Africa, on the magnitude of the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Abbas Kiarostami is a very sensitive person, and although this was his first shoot outside his home country, he was in sync immediately as soon as he arrived. And because we had discussed earlier and, invited him to come to IFAD headquarters where he met other colleagues and we talked extensively about the situation on the ground, he was quite at ease. But we could see that he was deeply moved by what he saw.
In 2000, Uganda was the victim of AIDS. Today it's changed because the government has been very active in assisting and doing training and awareness. But in 2000, there were 1.6 million kids with one or both parents dead because of HIV/AIDS.
IFAD is a United Nations agency mandated to work with the rural poor in the rural areas of the developing world. We thought that when the United Nations was working on raising awareness of HIV/AIDS related issues, that we had a message ourselves to send out.
A child dying or going hungry because her parents or his parents are dead in Masaka in the middle of nowhere in Uganda doesn't attract CNN.
And we thought that the best way to send out that message would be with assistance of an internationally known director, particularly one like director Abbas Kiarostami, who felt very deeply about the plight of children.
We thought that it would be a good idea to ask Dr. Kiarostami to make his own Kiarostami product, his own documentary, with his own creativity.
Ramin, my colleague, came up with a proposal to contact him, which he did.
He was interested, definitely, but he was reluctant. Before ABC Africa, Director Kiarostami had never worked outside Iran. It was the very first time he was asked to produce a documentary in Africa. So, okay, what I will think, etc. It took me a year of diplomacy and persuasive power and phone calls without just pushing too much, just the software.
When he reacted to our invitation, we were extremely proud that he accepted this invitation and that he was given this opportunity to do something about it.
He came to IFAD headquarters. We had a luncheon for him, but he doesn't like these things. And then the same day we went to Kampala with Ethiopian Airlines, I remember. If you look at the movie, there are shots of Ethiopian Airlines. And that's how the adventure started.
From the moment Mr. Kiarostami arrived in Uganda, he didn't stop shooting. I didn't see his camera turned off for a minute. As we drove through from Kampala into the remote areas, the camera was always on.
We were looking for locations. We were looking for stories to come back and make the movie. But while doing this, he says, I was taking notes with my camera. And those notes became the material for the real movie.
He would go into the late night markets. During the day, he would go into people's houses So it was a continuous process throughout the scouting mission, if you like to call it so.
We stayed there, I think it was about 10 days, and we went to Masaka, for instance. It was, at the time, in 2000, it was AIDS epicenter. It was the worst place on earth as far as AIDS pandemic is concerned. And it was heartbreaking because you go to these gorgeous villages. I mean, the climate is lovely. You have this green is really green, and the the sky is like that Claude Monet has done it himself. It's gorgeous.
You just heard the birds, you had the whispers of the children, you heard the women talk, but there were no men around.
And you don't realize that the first half an hour. But then you look around, where is the youth? I mean, where are the 30s and 40s? Gone. Dead.
That was quite scary. I used to notice how involved he was with the people, and some small sort of events also moved me. I remember he went into a hospital, and there was a dead body coming out, and he wanted to make sure that he allowed privacy to the family. The shot that moved me the most, that he captured also, was the dead body was of a little child, which was then put on the back of a bicycle. Every evening when we would come back and unwind, I would see him sitting on the lawn of the hotel. It was a very modest hotel, and he would just sit on the lawn and sit there for hours thinking. There were times when I would go and sit with him and have a little chat, but I knew that was breaking his thought process. So there were times when I would just sit on the steps far away from where he was, just watching this man, sitting there thinking. I suppose he was planning for the next day or what he wanted to do in the film. There were very moving moments.
One night we were having dinner. He said, "You know what? I never considered asking for a second citizenship in my life. But if I have to, I like to be Ugandan." He was so impressed.
One of the remarkable things that Mr. Kiarostami did with a lot of patience is, as soon as he would talk to a group of children or film somewhere, he would invite the children over soon after to show, what he had shot. And the children just loved it. They just loved, to see themselves in that. And they couldn't figure out, what this instrument was. But he would take time to explain how the whole process worked. And that was one of the most delightful, most delightful memories that I have, of being with Mr. Kiarostami during this mission.
I have to say that I was really impressed by the fact that Dr. Kiarostami managed to highlight crucial elements, like, for instance, in the context that we know that people still have their own dignity, that those people use their solidarity. Those are values that we have lost a little bit in our European cultures.
The movie, despite the tragedy, talks about life, about hope, and how we can go on and be happy. There is, the movie is long, it's over 80 minutes, I think. Maybe 2 minutes that we go to a hospital in Masaka, which is the AIDS epicenter in Uganda, and you see the little body of a tiny kid being carried by his dad. But besides that, it's always, how we make it, how life continues, and, how hopeful we are about it.
He managed to show this and to highlight this with this contrast, with the colors, with the people dancing, and then the opposite, the negative side also, the difficult side, the poverty, death, desperation. It was all there.
We arrived to look at the location, to see what's going on. Also for me, I knew the project through IFAD's papers, documents. But I had no clue who are the actors, what is Uveso, who's running Uveso.
It all started in '95 when they asked us to assist the development of Uwezo. So we created the partnership between IFAD, Person Survival Fund, and Uwezo. The objective of the Uwezo development project was to empower the foster families of the communities. Foster families who have taken in 2, 3, 4, 5 children by providing them with small loans, $20, $30, $50, combined with training, so that after a while they can start their own business, their own shop, and they can at least be empowered to help the orphans and their own children, to send them to school, to have a better nutrition, to have access to health services. They will never have access to normal loans from normal banks, because normal banks are not interested in small loans to those families. And that's exactly the beauty of this Uwezo approach, where they, thanks to their activities, they have created an outreach to the most vulnerable, the poorest of the poor.
I have an extraordinary memory from Masaka, a lady who is a beneficiary of Uveso, which means IFAD, Mama Benedette. She was 72 years old, God bless her, at the time. And she was looking after 32 orphans. 32 orphans. She had, thanks to IFAD, she got a tiny loan of $400, something like that, and some training, and she was producing bananas. With that, with the income generated from that, she was looking after these kids. And I asked her, Mama Benedette, life must be really hard for you. She looked at me and she said, you know what? And it's in the movie. Means that you haven't understood a thing. You're just... When Kiarostami went back to Tehran, they started looking at these images. They had, I think, over 50 hours footage among both of them. Samadian, the cameraman, Kiarostami, and the tiny part from me. And 3-4 months later, he said, Ramin, you know what? I think I have enough material to start editing. I think maybe we go back for another week or so, but maybe, I don't know, but I'll let you know. Why you don't come to look at what we have? So I took the plane, next week I went. And he was right. It wasn't, it was just, it took him over a year to do the editing. And I'm talking 5th month. And in fact, he had enough material to finish his work. And there it was, a year later, over a year later, maybe 14 months of editing, ABC Africa was produced.
As soon as the film was ready, not only was it, sort of distributed in various capitals of the world, but the UN itself, including UNESCO, UNICEF, showed the film at their governing body meetings. And the governing body meetings, as you know, have member states. And so it was learning from each other also as to what was happening in Uganda and how the people themselves had risen to the occasion to overcome this tragedy.
The issue of the European couple adopting the child at the end of the film was one of the issues discussed when the film was screened.
Day one, we are having breakfast at the hotel Sheraton in Kampala, and I see a very white, blonde, Northern European couple walking in to have breakfast with a tiny, cute boy, African obviously, and I told him, Abbas, these are here to adopt.
We assisted Uwezo to develop another approach, which is not exactly the same as the one reflected by Dr. Kiarostami, meaning empowering foster families so they cannot, that the orphans can stay in their own environment, and they can be empowered, the families, to provide education, health care and services and care for the children.
It wasn't planned, it just happened. We were having breakfast. And it was obvious they are there to adopt an orphan, and we were producing a movie about orphans. There is no message whatsoever. We are not, the aim is not to encourage people from Europe to adopt orphans. It's just part of the journey. I mean, the big news came in May 2001. At the time, as I promised him before, I was working in Africa. He said, guess what? I want you to come to Cannes because ABC Africa is going to Cannes. I said, no, don't tell me. Yeah, it's a special screening.
I think in IFAD, our colleagues were very much surprised that it went to the Film Festival of Cannes. We all know the Film Festival of Cannes. And of course, I don't think that in the history of our organization, we ever had a documentary or a film that went to Cannes to highlight exactly this aspect that I mentioned.
It got a huge media coverage. It went, I mean, not only to Cannes, it went to major film festivals, including New York Film Festival. Martin Scorsese, who is a good friend of Kiarostami, called it the best film he had ever seen that year. It had a contribution, of course. I mean, it went all around the world. I'm convinced ABC Africa is the best project I have ever worked for. I mean, I'm really proud. I'm so scared that I don't want to produce any other documentary in my life, because once you have done it, then you can talk about it and you won't get disappointed by doing something.
I've been in IFAD for about 14 years, and I have to tell you that this is one of my most important and touching experience in my short career in IFAD, because it is exactly highlighting and going to the core of our work.
As far as AIDS is concerned, there is tremendous awareness. If you go to Uganda today, you'll see the number of billboards and the number of advisories that the government sends out, to inform people what it is and what precautions they should take and what behavioral patterns should be set in that society. So I think that they have come a long way. What is remarkable is that the entire nation seemed to be on this together. There was no division, there was no opposition. This was a problem, human lives were involved, children were involved, and everybody worked on it together. And you do see that there has been a lot of progress on this front, particularly in the country.